Hola amigos and amigas, and welcome to Learn Spanish World. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad that you've come back. Today we will be discussing another important subject dealing with learning acquisition. Do you think it's possible to learn a language perfect, like to perfection, within 1 to 3 or to 6 months? Can you become a native speaker just simply by buying a book? Buy this book, and within 3 to 6 months you will be able to speak perfect. People won't even notice that you actually were born overseas. Just pay us $99, okay? Well, it seems that there's a lot of products and people out there selling different types of tools and publications in order to help you to learn a language within 1 week up to 6 months and so on. But is it truly realistic to expect a person to be able to learn a language and reach native fluency within 1 month to 6 months? Think for a moment. When you were first born, how long did it take you to learn your mother language? Or how many of us know a little kid who within the first few months of life was able to have deep and profound conversations with his or her parents? Well, in order to have a meaningful conversation with someone, you need at least 3,000 words or more in order to communicate, in order to establish a conversation and be able to carry that conversation on, rather than just using single words here and there. And this is when vocabulary accumulation comes in. It is extremely important that you increase your vocabulary, because true, it may be difficult to fully understand the syntax of a sentence in another language, but if you start learning words and enhancing your vocabulary, you will be able to make connections, and you will be able sometimes to understand what a conversation is all about by connecting these words, this vocabulary that you've learned. So that's one of the first things that you should be doing, increasing your vocabulary. And how do we do that? Well, we do that basically by listening carefully, repetition, and if you really want to speed up the process of learning a language as quick as possible, you should start reading. Now, fantastic news! Spanish is a phonetic language. That means that the way you read a word, that's the way you pronounce it. There's a lot of languages out there that are not phonetical, and it can give you a lot of headaches trying to see a particular letter or word and see that it's pronounced in different ways, and it can, for example, change it sounds completely. Now, Spanish has that advantage that if you start reading Spanish, you will accustom yourself to pronouncing the words correctly. So in order to increase your vocabulary, start reading as soon as possible. Try to read comics, books, readers for Spanish learners that can truly speed up your learning process. One of the things that really upset me is to see a lot of misleading claims in the internet, particularly where people are taught that within 5 minutes a day, within a month, you will be able to be a native speaker almost of a language. The truth is that that is an unrealistic expectation. Learning a language takes a long time and it takes a lot of effort. True, you can speed up the process if you truly immerse yourself in learning the language. And what do I mean by that? If you constantly surrounded by people that speak to you in your mother language, and you are constantly pretty much doing activities in your mother language, and you devote 2 or 3 minutes a day to learn your target language, the language that you want to learn, I don't think anyone would be able to learn a language to perfection within 3 months or 6 months. So it's important that we set realistic expectations. You can learn a language really well within 12 months if you truly apply yourself And what do I mean by saying learning a language really well? I don't mean that you'll be able to speak like a native speaker. It is impossible. It took you years and years for you to master your own mother language. So it would be completely unrealistic to expect that within a few months, by some kind of miracle, you'd be able to speak the language to perfection. A lot of these people that claim that they traveled to an island in the French Polynesia and they spent 3 days there and then they came back and they're all fluent in French, they're simply an outright lying to you. They don't. They may know a few words, a few sentences here and there, but they do not speak the language perfect. There are people who, yes, I'll give you that they're able to speak the language remarkably well, and some of them even sound like native speakers, but they put forth a lot of effort. I know people who speak extremely well Spanish, and it's really hard to tell the difference between them and a native speaker, but they immerse themselves in the language. They spoke at least 8 hours a day. They watch the news in the language. They constantly read in the language, and they lived in a country. Now, not everyone's got the luxury of being able to travel overseas and live in a country where your target language is spoken. But don't forget that we live in the 21st century, so obviously we have a lot of advantages over language learners of the 20th centuries. For a start, you got the internet. The population has become more diverse. We got people from different languages and ethnic backgrounds living in most cities around the world. So you can actually try to make connections with some of those groups in order to, to experience that opportunity of spending time with the people that speak the target language. Now, how do we go about setting up realistic goals? First of all, understand that you are allowed to make mistakes. You do not have to sound like a native speaker. That could be very discouraging and unrealistic, particularly during your first few months. The important goal here is for you to be able to communicate, to be understood, and to understand others in the target language. So before worrying too much about, do I sound like a native speaker? Am I pronouncing this perfect? Forget about that. Just start speaking the language, do your best, try to immerse and try to experience the language as much as possible, and little by little you will be able to improve your pronunciation and your grammar in the target language. But the main thing is for you to be able to understand and to be understood. So setting up realistic expectations is one of the first things that we need to do. Number two, listening. Listening is very important. You may start by listening to music, by making friends with the people that speak this language. And also number two, reading. Reading is so important, and you get a big advantage. If you are learning Spanish is a phonetical language. That means that the way you read a word is the way that you pronounce that word. Other languages are not phonetic, and no matter how you're reading, you don't know how that word should be pronounced and how a particular letter may be pronounced sometimes, and so on. I'll give you an example. I knew someone that was learning English, and one of the biggest frustrations this person had was that the vowels, the sound changed constantly. We may not realize it because we speak the language on a daily basis, but for example, the word burning, the vowel U, which in Spanish is U. In Spanish, that letter will always be U. It doesn't change. It will never be A, E, I, no, it's always U. But in English, a U may be sounding differently depending on the word. I'll give you an example. Burning. We don't say burning or burning. However, sometimes the U sounds like an A. And that means that whoever tries to learn English will have to memorize the way the particular letter is pronounced. Now in Spanish, the good news is that is a phonetic language. So once you get the right pronunciation of the letters, no matter what you read, you should be okay. You shouldn't have any problems. And reading is one of the best way of increasing your vocabulary. Now, 3, very important that in order to be able to learn the language, that you use it. Do not be afraid of using the language. Do not be afraid of studying with little things like using a word in Spanish here and there, because that's the first thing you should be doing in order to improve your Spanish language skills. Start using the language. So listening, reading, and using the language will pave the way for you to be able to learn Spanish. Now, if you ask me again, is it really reasonable? Is it realistic to expect a person to learn a language perfect within 3 to 6 months? My answer would be no. It would not be realistic. Yes, a lot of people may claim that they were able to do so, but most likely they're trying to sell you a product, or they're trying to convince you to access some of their services. It's unrealistic. A lot of these people may be able to communicate in the target language to a certain degree, but to claim that they're able to be native, to be able to express themselves like a native, it's completely unrealistic. So, in order for you to learn the language, you have to put a lot of effort. So if you really want to learn a language, start with vocabulary accumulation. It's very important. Start building your vocabulary, study grammar, and little by little, you will achieve proficiency in the language. Okay, amigos, that's been all for today. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And if you have any questions, or if you want to share your points of views, please don't forget to leave us a comment. And if you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe. We'll be uploading more lessons. If you know anyone who would like to subscribe, tell them Learn a Spanish World. Go there and click the button subscribe. That will help us enormously. Okay, amigos, until next time. Adios.